Try and break this thing up into two sections. The first section, I'd like to just talk about multimedia in general. And I'm going to be using a package that I did not create, but I purchased. And I think a point about multimedia that can be made is it's not always going over there and spending hours and hours and hours developing things and programming and things like that. Sometimes you can just walk out there and purchase a product and use it in your presentation. And in my first section here, I'm going to use this package. And then in the second part of it, I'll use a program called Authority, where I did have to do some, spend some time programming and things like that. So I'm going to give you a little bit of both areas. I'm going to try and do this and get you involved in it, because I'm not exactly sure what kind of questions you may have about multimedia or some of the equipment that's used in this area. So if you could just maybe give me a few questions, and I'll use this multimedia package to try to answer those, and then I might elaborate on if you're still going to have some trouble with that. So open up to questions first.
What's the ready-made package called?
This is called the Guided Tour of Multimedia.
That's the name of the software?
No, this is the name of the CD-ROM.
Okay.
What I did is I went to a bookstore, and it was in a book, and it was very inexpensive. I think it was like $35. You got the book and the CD-ROM. You could run this on any machine probably that you have in your department if you have a CD-ROM.
Dolph, when you say multimedia, what is multimedia?
Okay, glad you asked. About multimedia overview. One thing you might watch for, as I click these icons, the person that does the speaking on the computer immediately starts. Okay, so you have to kind of be ready for him to do his little spiel, and they're very short. And then if you still have some questions, I'll try to elaborate. But this particular package has a icon here called Multimedia Overview.
Here you'll find answers to the questions below. This will provide you with a general foundation of multimedia concepts that will be described in detail in later chapters. Computer technology to bring together a variety of media. Click on each media icon to find out more about the individual media elements that make up a multimedia production.
I think they have a pretty good, just small definition here, and it's probably the most standard one that's used. I think when you hear the term multimedia, you envision a lot of different, pieces of equipment and programming and things like that. But when it really gets down to it, it's just basically using this equipment to put out a presentation that you can use a little more interactively. That's the part of it that I like the best, is that you can use it for interactive, just like this, this presentation right here. Some of the things that you might be able to use in multimedia, animation.
Want to keep those executives awake through 26 marketing projection graphs? Throw in an animation. It grabs attention and adds humor to presentations.
One thing I like about using it as a teaching tool, I can work it where I can stop it and maybe elaborate a little bit, and then go on with maybe a graphic to show that principle. And there's an animation. Now, again, this was a purchased product, but we have the equipment and the ability of software that if I wanted to actually create this on my own, maybe instead of having an airplane, I had Mr. Boat flying across there or something like that, I could do that. Okay, so, but this is a purchased software here. And if you see that word video there, normally they'll boldface that or change the color, and that basically means if you click on that, it'll give you a little bit more information about that particular word. Maybe somebody in the audience doesn't really know what that is. You can bring that in, and that'll help you there. But basically, multimedia is just bringing in these areas, sound, graphics, video, put them into a package, and hopefully use that to communicate a message. One thing I wish they would add to this is the interactivity, because we have a lot of ways to do multimedia. You can do multimedia with VHS and not have any interactivity at all, but it's still multimedia. But I like the part of interactivity where the student or the presentator can have some interactivity. And that's what I like about it.
Do you have to be able to know programming to make your own interactive?
Well, this is a perfect example. I bought this package, didn't have to do any programming at all, and I feel like this is interactivity. I'm able to stop this and move it, do anything I want with it to explain, in this case, multimedia or whatever it might be. Let me see if I can find a better example. Let's see, this I want to explain. CD drives, we talk about CD
Welcome to
drives all
Chapter
the
3,
time.
Multimedia Technical Fundamentals. This chapter will give you an understanding of the audio and video technology that is merged with new computer developments to create multimedia. Select the section button to begin.
So, for example, if I was in the classroom teaching multimedia, I might say, does anybody know what a photo CD is? And maybe somebody would raise their hand and they would, give their try at it, and then if they were right, of course, I would praise them, and then I would show, well, here's another way of presenting that.
Transferring your 35mm photo to CD is now available at your local photo processor. It's called Photo CD by Kodak and offers an easy way for multimedia developers to access still photos.
And it is just a little graphic about what that is. But maybe at this point, I'll just go ahead and go into.
Available through the
Yes,
PRC.
this particular program is called Authority. And this is, Gary, you were asking before, a package that we can actually develop multimedia packages. What I like about Authority is you don't have to know a lot of programming. Matter of fact, you could create some presentations without any programming knowledge at all. But you could also go a little bit deeper if you need to and throw some programming in there. With the programming, that's where you get most of your interactive. That's when you can do a little bit more programming. The package that I developed was for a electronics course that we teach to the automotive students, air conditioning students. I felt like they needed some repetitive action with something called Ohm's Law, which is just some formulas that we use to find out currents and voltages. And I wanted something they could sit down at the computer, interact with the computer, and repetitively go through these formulas, and hopefully it was going to help them. So that's what the package was developed for. This first screen, this is the student would never see this part of it. This is where I actually developed this through some flow charting and some other things, and I'll show you that a little bit later. Student would not see this. When you're finished with your package, you save it in such a way that you can give that to the student, and he just does an exe files, which we call it, and he does not see any of this program. He just sees the product that you've developed.
Dolph, in what environment do they sit down and have this given?
In my case, I gave them a copy and told them they'd go to the library. We're talking about very few students, maybe 6 or 7 in a class. So it was easy for me to give them the software, and they were able to just go over to the library and run it. In my case, it wasn't something that I had in my syllabus that they had to do. I didn't try to keep up with it. I told them it was available to them, and most of them would come to me and ask, I'd like to use that to help me out, and they would go over it. I got some pretty good feedback. Some of them didn't say anything about it. Some of them told me it did help them.
So was it used for remedial or reinforcement?
Reinforcement. The formulas, and you'll see the formulas here in just a minute. It's just something that if you sit there and just do some of these formulas over and over again, pretty soon you've got it in your head. So instead of this, I could have just gave them a piece of paper with a bunch of formulas on it and said, here, do these and turn them back in. But to me, this way, it gives them it's a little bit funner, I guess you might say. I could do both. Sometimes I would give them both. Do these problems, turn them in, and once you go to the computer and sit there and run these over and over. If you have some problems, you're not getting the right answers, I have a little section they can go over and read about how to do the formulas, that kind of thing. So it's just another tool for them to be able to get this information.
Does this require CD-ROM also?
No. This is, you can use CD-ROM. If I wanted to bring in a special graphic from CD-ROM or from video, it has that capability. But at the time I wrote this, I don't believe we had some more software or something like that. It has the capability, just need to order a few more things. from that, the screens that you'll see from now on are ones that I created. This would be the first screen that the student would see. I have a section here where they can click just to go over to a little brief explanation about Ohm's law and where it's derived. Gives them the formulas and what they represent. Of course, before they would get this, we've already did this in lecture. In other words, I wouldn't just give this to them and say, here, go learn this. We've already had some lecture. This is just to reinforce that. So have some information here about Ohm's law. A little bit more. Tells them, you know, if they're having trouble with these problems, this is one way to solve them. So if they're in the actual practice and they're having some trouble, they can always go back to this and maybe find out what they're doing wrong. Now this is the actual problems that they would do. I've changed it up just a little bit for the presentation, so I didn't have to do any calculations. I actually put the answer right here. That wouldn't be on the one the students use. But basically what they do, they have a challenge, click the resistor that will cause so many amps to flow. They would do the calculation, and then they have 3 choices. They could come up and say they calculated wrong. Just a little clip there. And they go over here. And then they're able to try it again. This time they've got it correct. Go back up. Maybe they've forgotten their calculator. I wanted them to use their own if they had it, but if they didn't, we could bring one up for them. I might mention right here, Gary Groff helped me a little bit here. The calculator that I developed, I couldn't get the point key to work, and he was able to fix that problem for me. It's actually keeping track of how many you've got wrong, how many you've got right. So I want to do a couple more of those just so that you can see that data. But this will go on and on. As many times as they want to try this,
You can
it's
just
repetitive.
You can put in different resistance in the.
Yeah, actually what happened, I have it set up, and this is part of the program. I have it set up so that every time this makes a loop, there's different values of resistors, different values of voltages. So it's a different problem every time. It's fairly random.
Dolph, how many problems can a student work on this?
Indefinitely on this. It's just it's in a random loop. In programming, you're able to create random numbers where every time you go through this particular part of the program, it has a little formula that goes through and picks up different numbers. And then the next time I come around, it has a different set. And then I'm able to do some calculations to come up with the right answer. And then you're just doing a compare. Compare the right answer to the one they picked. If they got it, then the resistor comes down and tells them they got it right. So
Changing the voltage as well?
yes, let me do one right here. Should get a different voltage. What is it, 85 volts right now? Now it's 84. You know, you think that's not a very big change, but in current and voltage and that time, that's a pretty big change. And it'll change a lot more than that. The next time it might be 22. Just depends because it's a random situation. That's I do it 2 ways. I could have went to like a paint program and made a PCX file and brought those in. Or if it's something simple like this, Authority actually has a little paint program. I can show you that in just a minute.
So you created those?
I'm trying to remember. I think I created them right here. I can look in just a minute. Because I'm gonna go through a little bit of how this comes together and how it doesn't. I can show you that. Any other questions about the product itself?
Now you got the calculator in there. You just imported that from someplace.
Well, it actually was a part of Authority,
Oh,
okay? But it was, once Gary and I, and if, let's say I want to do parallel circuits, or maybe I wanted to have 4 or 5 resistors in series. Instead of having to create everything again, I would just have to maybe create a couple of graphics, change a couple of formulas. Everything else would stay the same, the flow. So once you've got one package built, very easy to be able to use it in other ways. If I wanted to go to parallel circuits, I could probably change maybe 3 or 4 boxes in this and have the same package, same problems, in just a different circuit. So you can do a lot with that. This is the program where I generated the random numbers. Okay, now, if you never did any programming or anything like that, this is just garbage. But Gary can maybe step in here a little bit, but this is fairly easy programming. If you know basic programming, then you can probably sit down by yourself and work this out with your books and things like that. So, yes, there's some programming involved if you want to do some, things like I did where I needed some numbers generated or something like that. But I think this tool can be used in two ways: just for presentation, where you just got screens coming up one after the other, or as a package that you can use interactively with students. You have to have a little bit more programming skills.
Does that have some functions built in? If you're going to do something in math, you group with a square root sign.
Yes, it has many things that I can draw from. Some of the, like this program right here, I don't know, there might have been a function, it's called a function, that does that for you. Just go there and pull it in and maybe do some changes to it. So yes, there's some things that are already there for you. Makes it a lot easier. The screen where I developed this, if I want to draw a picture or something like that, I can bring this in.
This is all being done in authority, is that?
Yes.
That's available in the TRC here?
Yes.
What?
Turn it to teaching and learning center.
TLC.
Come my paint's not coming up.
Kent's office. What is authority cost?
The multimedia version is $249, and the non-multimedia version, if you just needed the text and graphics part, but didn't have CD-ROM at all available, is $149.
You gotta choose it and go in the end.
So it's
Now
really
that's-
not that expensive package for you to purchase that.
If I create a new one,
That is an
edit.
educational version. When it's
Oh,
bought
okay.
in order to create things and market them, then it goes up to around $600 for the multimedia version. But assuming that all of your purposes would be for educational reasons, then the $249
should have made
costs.
it bigger.
What's it costing now to add CD-ROM for a department?
That really depends on the way you do it. You can, if you already have sound cards and so forth, you're just adding the CD-ROM drive, you can keep that into $200. If you're having to add a sound card and CD-ROM, then you're probably looking at somewhere between $300 and $500 range, depending on what you get.
This is a little package that comes with authority that you can do your paint, make it on the size and things like that. So, most people probably like to go to the software that you can buy, PC Paint, things like that. It has a little bit more capability, and then just bring those pictures in. If you don't have that, it has its own little paint program. I can go in and make my own graphics.
Can you input other images from other sources though, like their scanner or video?
Sure. I know PCX, some of the TIFF.
Well, everything has to,
If you think of animation of just moving graphics around, this would be a very easy demonstration right here. Maybe if you want to get into something like, maybe you've got the inside of an engine or something like that, and you want to show the combustion engine or something like that, it's probably going to be better to get that from maybe a video disc or something like that and bring that in. Depending on how graphic you want that to be. It can, and to me that's the whole key to multimedia. It can be done. It might take a little bit of work, but just about any of these things that you want to get them put together, we can do it. I could go in and change the color of this box here. I could even change the color of the resistors. Fairly easy. So if you have an application where color is for example, I know a very good example in electronics, resistive color codes, where we got color codes on a resistor. I'm working on one of these where they can sit and comes up with 3 or 4 colors. They have to type in the number of the value of the resistor. If it's correct, it'll tell them. If not, it'll tell them why. And that kind of thing. So colors are a tool that you can use in interactivity that brings out much. I think a real key point in multimedia is safety. If I want to demonstrate to my students what happens if they hook up a capacitor backwards. I couldn't actually do that in the lab because of safety reasons, but if I could film that in a safe environment and bring it in one of these multimedia packages and show it, that's a great tool. Safety, something you can't actually do in the lab. Show them in multimedia.
Can you scan into this program?
Let's say you had a video that had been shot, you demonstrated some of these principles with some equipment. Now, I assume you'd have to go to the multimedia part of the authority to input that. But you could have like a little movie section on here,
Sure.
and then, can that also be made?
Oh, well, in authority,
Yeah.
I don't,
No.
the new version won't be able to let you do that.
Authority will not do.
Do another package. If I want to bring in WordPerfect or something like that, or database. That's it. One of the things that I might mention, I don't want to stand up here and act like I'm the guru of authority. The packages that I use, I haven't needed to go out and use all this, different types of CD-ROMs and things like that. I've just been using animation, graphics, and keeping it very simple. So maybe some of the questions I'm glad Ken was here to be able to answer. I haven't used the new version, the multimedia version. Haven't had a need. And I think that's a good point. You think, well, I'm going to go use these packages. I've got to use all this stuff. I better get the CD-ROM in there. I better get the laser disc. And you don't always need to do that. It depends on your audience and what the communication you're trying to get across. And up to this point, I really haven't needed anything like that. I want to do some safety things. That's my next venture is to get some things that I want to show, but I can't do them in the lab. But you won't let me
And
blow
at that
things up.
point, sound might be more important to what
Your audience and do it the easiest way possible. Like the first presentation, there's no way in a week I could have put that together and show you that. But it was there, $30. Charged it to Beery Orchard, and well. But then there are other times like this package. Probably couldn't go out there and buy this the way I wanted it. This is the way I wanted it, so I was able to create it.
Go use like
Macintosh, what's that?
Yeah.
Is Authority the program you use for a wiring schematic test, which we haven't been able to do on the CADE in the past? Can you put a wiring?
Yes, if I wanted to create study guides or a test, there's going to be some programming involved because you probably have to use kind of a database to be able to grade it and score it, maybe some passwords and stuff like that. But I'm sure you can do that because you can get using this system, I can get out to any package I want to. It could be developed and I can get it.
If you develop it on
Good morning. I'm happy to be here this morning. I'm always anxious to show new technology and things that I learned how to do. So often, the only people who really know the teachers' expertise sometimes are only the students. So it's really exciting to get to share this with you this morning. What I have done is really totally different from Dolph's presentation. I use a package called WordPerfect Presentation, and I'm going to be giving some handouts here in a minute that are going to show you the computer equipment that I currently use, and it will also show you the minimum requirements of WordPerfect Presentation, because you do not have to have what I have in order to do this. But what I wanted to start out first doing is telling you a little bit about why I decided to do this. I teach 3 sections of medical terminology, 1, 2, and 3, or 3 courses of medical terminology, 1, 2, and 3. And medical terminology is like learning a new language. And unfortunately, since we don't get to test, we take people who come in and say, I want to do this, and sometimes, especially medical terms 1, I may have a student who is not extremely sharp as far as spelling is concerned, and maybe needs just a little bit extra to be able to succeed in the course. And so I polled my students, and I've been trying to get something developed like this for about the last 4 or 5 years. And over that time frame, I would poll my students, and I'd say, well, what if I had it on the CADE system? I don't want to work with any more computers. I'm already taking 4 classes, and I have to use a computer in each one of them, and I'm tired of computers. That was one comment I got from my students. And I'd say, okay, what is it that you want? What would you use? Well, if I had something real simple, I could just start, push play, or something like that. Because in my course, it's essentially a matter of learning how to spell, learning what certain words mean. It's not a matter of formulas and that kind of thing, okay? So repetition is something that my students definitely needed. And it's not always easy to get the student in my time frame where they could come in and work extra. And even that, a lot of times wasn't enough. The student might need a little more than that. Another thing that I wanted was an ability, because my medical terminology class, and you'll see in a minute why, is not a class that just anyone can walk in and cover if I happen to be gone, which I did have to be gone last semester for about a 6-week period. And so this was a way for me to be able to be there without being there. In fact, right now, my 2 terms classes have taken place, and I was there even though I wasn't there, because they showed the tapes, examples of which I'm about to show you. So these were some of the reasons why. Also, because of my class, it's pretty much a straight lecture. I can show transparencies, I can show some videos on the body and that kind of thing, but really more than anything else, what we zero in on is terminology. And so I wanted a way of being able to make this a little more exciting for them. And with Word Perfect Presentation, I'm able within just a really short time to be able to create with some color screens, with some music in the background, and with my voice, a videotape that I can plop in a VCR, push play, and let my students watch. And it's a little more exciting than just having to stand there and watch me dictate words to them. And yet it still gives the same principle. And I've also included in my handouts some comments. I polled them last week and asked them to give me some honest comments, and I told them I was going to use their name. And if they put a comment down, I wanted it to be honest, so that if you went up to them and asked, did you actually say this about these tapes, they could honestly say, yes, I did. That is a quote that I said, and Ms. Zeke did not twist my arm to say it. So those are some other things I'll be sharing with you later on. Statistic-wise, I pretty well play the tape at least once every chapter. I started this in December, and I am just now getting all of my 3 classes or courses where I have the videotapes on all of them, because I've started from scratch and I've just been slowly developing. And so by this fall, I'm hoping to be starting working on the 2nd set, because I'd like to have 2 or 3 sets of tapes to be able to show my classes, so it's not the same repetition. Because it's like you listen to a radio, the same radio station that has pre-programmed music. You get to where you can tell what the next song is. You start humming it before they start playing it. Well, I find this to be the same case in learning terminology. For example, if you always say the same words in the same order, they almost get to where if you mix them up, they can't spell them, because they've learned them in that order. And if Enya doesn't precede Sido, then they can't spell them. So I'm going to also be developing some additional in different format. Now, I color-coded my handouts, and I do this in my class as well, because this gives me a chance to be able to show them, rather than having to explain something. I can just simply say, now if you'll turn to the pink one or the green one or whatever. Plus it's also, they like it rather than the plain ordinary old white paper. It's more pleasing to the eye. And so what I've done is I've crisscrossed these, and there should be 3, a green, a blue, and an orange. So if you just pass those around and get one section. We're going to talk about the green sheet first, and I would like to make this comment. This is the actual sheet that I pass out to my terms class. I give what are called study sheets, and in the study sheet they are required to go through and answer the theory questions, and then it also shows the spelling words and any additional word parts that I may be adding, because the author doesn't always give all the word parts. And so as a result, I like to add some of them, because so many of the word parts, or so many of the medical words are made from those word parts, and the more word parts they can learn, the better it is for them. So what I'm trying to say is I'd like to have the green sheet back, so I can go ahead and hand this out to my students this fall. This is an actual handout, as I said, for Medical Terminology 1. And what I'd like for you to do is to turn over to page 6. Now on page 6 we have the ending of the medical terminology words that they're going to be learning, and then right about a third of the way down the page it says word parts, and there's a list there. It tells you what page in the chapter that the word parts are found, because the author does introduce those to some. And then a lot of times I will change the meaning of one or two, like in this case I have blasto, which the author defines as primitive cell in the textbook. Sometimes it's easier for them to remember immature cells, so I tell them they can define it either way. And lympho is defined as lymph, which is not hard to remember, but we need to know that lymph is an alkaline fluid, so I've changed that meaning. And then from that point on, the rest of them are additions. And the first part that I'm going to show you on my video is of these word parts. Now on the word parts, they have to learn how to spell them and also how to define them. So what you're going to see on the video is the name of the chapter, which I have changed, and rather than putting chapter 8, which is what this is for the current textbook, we're changing new editions. The author, I didn't know how much change she'd made, so rather than using the chapter number, I used the system name. So you'll see blood and lymphatic system, and it'll give them a brief explanation of what they need to do. And then I'll dictate the word part, give them a second or two to think about how it's spelled, and if they want to, they can actually practice writing it, which if I'm doing this in class, I insist that they write the word. And then it will show the spelling of the word, and then it will show the meaning of the word. And keep in mind, this is just a small section. I've only included about 2 or 3 screens here. There would be many screens because we have a multitude of word parts, but this is we'll just give you an idea of what the word parts are like.
Medical Terminology 1, Blood and Lymphatic System Review. Let's start out with word parts. You need to be able to spell and define the following word parts. I'll pronounce the word part, give you a chance to spell it, and then spell and define it for you. Sarco. Sarco. Sarco, S-A-R-C-O, sarco means flesh. Hemo, 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 H-E-M-O, hemo means blood. Leuco, leuco, L-E-U-K-O, leuco means white. Poikylo, 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 P-O-I-K-I-L-O, poikylo means buried. Erythro, 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 E-R-Y-T-H-R-O, erythro means red. Ectomy, 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 E-C-T-O-M-Y, ectomy means surgical removal or excision. Oma, 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 O-M-A, oma means tumor. Site, 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 C-Y-T-E, site means cell. Spleno, 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 S-P-L-E-N-O, spleno means spleen. This concludes the section on the word parts.
Okay, now there's several things I want to point out about this. So number one, if you're not interested in this, it's very boring. But students who take this hopefully are interested in it. And as I insist when they start out, they are aware of the fact that if you don't like this, if you don't really like to know about the body and like to spell words and learn new word meanings, you're probably not going to enjoy this, because that's about all we do. Because if I could play a tape for you, for example, that a doctor is dictating, that a medical transcriptionist is transcribing, you would understand why knowing these word parts are so very, very important. Because you cannot learn all of the spelling words that you're ever going to come in contact with. But you can learn a lot of different word parts that make up different words, and if you can just recognize 1 or 2 of those word parts, it's going to make all the difference in the world. And so that's one reason I always start out with the word parts. So I always start out with the word parts on any of these. Identify what chapter and what it is we're going to do. I also, as you notice, I stumbled a couple of times, and my son was listening the other night. He says, "Mom, you messed up on that." And I said, "I know I did, but if I tried to do these until I had them perfect, I'd never have my first tape finished." And plus, I mess up in class, so I feel like that it's important for it to be as real life as possible. So if I stumble on a word, unless it's just really, really bad, I just go on, because that's what I would have to do in class. I also, on this, had some music in the background, if you'll notice. And on these particular little blurbs, because they were so short, I went ahead and used the same music. But on the actual tapes, I found that it was much better to change the music. The music you're hearing, it comes directly from WordPerfect presentation. They have a lot of different sound clips, and you just go through and you can, they call it look, I say listen, but you can select it and actually listen to what it is and make a decision. And some of them are longer than others, so that also gives you an opportunity to see, how repetitious the melody is going to be to it. But I do select different music for each of the sections, like for word parts, and then when I go to spelling, I select another piece of music, because what I found was having the same music all the time had a tendency to put me to sleep, so I imagined what it was going to do to my students. So I did start doing that. They do have groupings, like they have a section on pop, they have 2 or 3 sections. So what I try to do is to stay within one of those sections and alternate between those. And I may use the same music over and over again, but I don't use it on all of them anymore like I used to. I also, you'll notice the screen has the grid and then the swoosh. In fact, that's what this is called, is swoosh. I also, when I first started doing this, I tried to stay away from those because I thought, oh, that's going to detract. But what I actually found is it even enhances more the interest, rather than just a plain gray screen with maybe just a little bit of color. Those with a little bit of the diagram on them in the back, or like in this case, like a paintbrush swooshed on there, really adds to it. So I've learned a lot, but this one shows you just the same one, because within a chapter, and this all represents chapter 8, within a chapter I keep the same screen, because I'm able to get 2 or 3 chapters on one VHS tape, 120 minutes. And this allows them, then if they're having to fast forward or reverse back and forth, they're able to easily tell when one chapter starts and when the next one ends, or when it starts and ends. So that's several things that I've learned to do since that, beginning in December. I've come a long way since then. And no, there's not any programming involved in this. And I'm going to show you in a minute how easy it is to put one together. Another thing that I wanted to demo for you was the section of spelling definition words. If you'll notice on pages 5 and 6, there are some of the words that have asterisks beside them. Well, those words, they have to be able to spell and also define. So when I first started learning how to do this, I thought, how am I going to do this? Well, in class, I found the best way to do it is to read the definition to them, let them think about it, and then decide what it is, pronounce the word, and then have them spell it, because that's what they have to do on the test. They need to really know it without having to have the word dictated to them first. And they don't, the words are dictated in a separate section, and then the definitions are in another part. So it's really to their benefit if they already know what the word is. And many of them are made up of the definitions of the word parts anyway, so they should be able to know it. So in this next section, this is how I handle the spelling definition.
Medical Terminology 1, Blood and Lymphatic System Review, Spelling Definition Words. You need to be able to spell and define the following words. Excision of the spleen, splenectomy, 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 S-P-L-E-N-E-C-T-O-M-Y. Red blood cells are medically referred to as erythrocytes, 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 E-R-Y-T-H-R-O-C-Y-T-E-S.
You also start seeing repetition here, erythro, if you remember.
A test for gastrointestinal absorption of vitamin B12. Schilling's test. Schilling's test. Schilling's, capital S-C-H-I-L-L-I-N-G-S, test, T-E-S-T. Medical name for a bruise, ecchymosis, ecchymosis. Ecchymosis, ECCHYMOSIS. Malignant tumors of supporting tissues are called sarcomas. Sarcomas. Sarcomas, SARCOMAS. Reduction of the number of leukocytes.
I have a mixer that allows me to be able to do that fade out and fade back in between each one of them. I don't run them continuously because I found that it worked better to have each one of the sections in a separate section, because that way if they wanted to work on just one section, they could. And as you can see, they could easily rewind it, and you can understand by seeing these words why they need some repetition. They're not easy. And if you know someone who's enrolled in medical terminology, you need to feel sorry for them because they have a lot of hours that they spend outside of class, and especially if they come in with a weak spelling background anyway. If they can't spell a simple English word, it's really hard for them to spell these. And so that's why I wanted something that was easy and simple for them to be able to just push a button and start working. They didn't want the interactivity. At first I thought about it because I have seen some programs where they can type it in and it tells them whether right or wrong. But this does the same thing in essence. And there's a lot of gratitude that's automatically comes about through being able to spell a word like ecchymosis. When you are able to spell those words and have them correct the first time, there's a lot of self-gratification that's automatically built into it. So this is one reason why I'm utilizing that. I have some others, but I'm not going to go ahead and I think you get the general idea of what I'm trying to do, don't you, here? I have a section on spelling, which is just, I dictate the spelling word and then give them a chance to spell it, and then I show it on the screen and spell it for them. Another nice thing about this is it allows them, for those people who don't learn just by listening but also by looking, it assists that person as well. I used to do cassette tapes because that was, and I still do some dubbing of cassette tapes for students who need extra help and maybe they don't want the video. I do have that available to them as well, but for those people who need to be able to hear it and also see it, this is excellent for them. And so that's one reason why I'm really excited about Word Perfect Presentation, because it allows me to be able to do within just a short time frame what I wanted to do for a long time. Yes?
Time factor.
For example, in this chapter right here, as you can tell, there's quite a bit to it, although on the theory, I don't ask all of those theory questions. I, on a lot of chapters, will have more theory questions than I will actually ask on the test because I want them to be aware of those questions, but they're not necessarily something they need to remember at this point in time. But time frame wise, I could probably plan, first of all, what I have to do is I have to go in and type in the text. I have a lot of this in Word Perfect, and that's one thing I want to point out to you. If you're already familiar with Word Perfect, you can type your text in Word Perfect and then bring it into Word Perfect Presentation. And I tried that once or twice, but the format that this is in and the format that I need that in, I'm a fast enough typist that it was easier for me to just rekey it than it was to have to go in and correct all of this, or not correct it, but put it in the right format, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so for me, depending on the length of the text, I will probably spend about 15 seconds a slide. Keying it in. Okay, 15 to 20 seconds a slide, keying it in. As far as going in and selecting the gallery, like the swoosh, those are already preset. You can make changes to it if you want to, but what I try to do is I just decide how much I want to show on a screen, and then I go in and it allows you. In fact, let me just go ahead and go into Word Perfect Presentation. And again, I don't have a magical formula. There's a top line that's not showing on this TV that I have on my computer. And I've been trying to do the mouse. I'm really a keyboard person, but I've been trying to use the mouse because I read in the book and it says that they recommend you use the mouse as much as possible with Word Perfect Presentation. So I've been trying to do that. But for example, if I want to create a slideshow, this is what the main screen looks like, and I go up to the top and select File, and it gives me a drop-down menu, and I come down and I say create slideshow. And then it'll ask me, do I want to create slideshow? Yes, no, which, I always wonder about these programs, but I guess they think you might accidentally get in one. Obviously I selected it, but you have to have the option of getting out because you do sometimes get in the wrong spot, so it's always a good idea to be able to go backwards. So I select yes. Okay, and it goes in and you go, well, it doesn't look a whole lot different, but if you notice down here, it says slide untitled. So I'm in a slideshow, I just haven't titled it and I haven't made any selections at this point. At this point, because of where I'm at, I usually go ahead and go up and select from the slide, which gives me another drop-down menu, and I go into the master gallery and I select that. And I go in, and this is all of the preset galleries. It gives you an idea of what the very first screen is going to look like as far as your title is concerned. And it has all sorts of different color combinations. They're all preset for you. What you see there is what you get. But I usually have a pretty good idea, since I've tried out most of these, I have a pretty good idea of where I want to go, so I just kind of come on down, and I don't necessarily try out different ones, but I'm going to show you how easy here in a minute it is to switch from one gallery to another. I'm going to start out with this one called Lake. I come down and I say I want it. Oh, well, let me before I do that, let me show you this. If I double click on the one that's selected, it will go in and it will show you what each of the different screens looks like. Each one of them has a background 1, background 2, which is different, and I start mine out with background 1, and I always end it with background 2, because I want to easily know the beginning and the end. Then it has a title, which sometimes on this title I may select it or change it to text, because on my title I usually have medical terminology 1, and some of these the font is so large that it doesn't put it on the line. And usually what I do is I just come down and select text, which still has a pretty good size font, but it'll usually will allow me to put my name on there without having to go in and change the font. Now I can go in and change the font, but you got to remember I'm trying to do this on a very short time frame, and it's easier a lot of times to just either maybe go select a different gallery, or like I said, to go from title to text. And then you can also do an organizational chart, a data chart, and then a combination chart. I don't utilize these, and I think you can understand why. But you could if you have, had a need for it. And I think Danny's going to show you some of the uses of that as well. But anyway, you can look at this. It'll tell you, like, one thing I like about it, when I look at this bullet chart, which is what I do, the ones where I do the drop downs, I can look at this right here, and let's say I want to put 6 different drop downs. This is what you select from this bottom menu right here. You have several things. This will allows you to look at an individual slide if you want to go in and add graphics. This is where you go in and put in your outline, is what you see right here. This allows you to go in and look at all the transitions that you're going to use, and I'll show that in a minute. And this allows you to show all your slides. It'll hold, I believe it's a total of 8. 4 on top and 4 on bottom, and it shows you how it's going to look. So it's real easy for you to go in and look and see how, you can't read it necessarily, but you can at least see how it's going to be placed on the slide and whether it's what you want. Like in this case, I just wanted 3 of my word parts to appear, and so I can see here easily that it's going to work out for me. At this point, I can go back into my outline. I can actually do it anywhere, but I usually do it on my outline for several reasons. One is if I'm just absolutely set on the gallery, then sometimes I have to manipulate my text in order for it to fit, and I'll show you in a minute what I mean. But at this point, I can go in and I can select slide again and go into my transitions. And what it does is it shows me the slide. Now this first one is untitled. Your background 1 and 2 do not allow you to show any text. All it shows is just your back, just the background itself. So it usually says here entitled, but as I go through these, you'll be able to see that the particular first couple of things, like most all of them will say word part on this section, because word part is my heading. You can go in and you can change your transition. That's how this is going to appear on the screen. I have found some of these are better than others. What you do is you just move your highlighter up and down and select whatever you want. Typically for the first one, I will use the one called Snake, right here, down that far. And it on your direction. On this particular one, you only can go right, left, up, or down. So it'll only highlight in black those things that you can select from the transition that you picked. On this one, I also usually will make it timed, because sometimes I have help with the equipment, and sometimes I'm doing it by myself. And so the timed feature gives me about 10 seconds to be able to manipulate all my things on the mixer before I get ready to start talking and advancing, because I do use the manual advance and all the rest of them. But you wouldn't necessarily, because you can advance this one just as well. But that 10 seconds kind of gives me a time frame of knowing that if that comes on, I'm spending more than 10 seconds trying to get everything arranged. I go to the next one, and I typically do this before I've already keyed in, and I'm only going to show this on one or two. I'm going to let the rest of them be normal. But because one's like the background one, I said is one transition, and then on all of my slides that have the text on them, I take those and do the same transition on all of those, because if I do it on the first one, and then I start keying in my slides, it advances that same transition on the rest of them, and I don't have to go to each individual slide and set them up. So it's a real time factor savings there for being able to decide what I want to do on the first one and then just let it go through on the rest of them. Plus, I found it's not really to your advantage to have it going 15 different ways. It's more distracting than it is anything else. And on this, I typically use things like diagonal is one of my favorite ones, and I'll usually use right up. And then I also, to get that cascading effect, I go and select these on bullets, cascade bullets, and bullets only. And then I can just go to each one of those. And like I said, if I do it on the first one, it carries through. As you can see, this one is still normal, so I'm going to have to individually do each one of these, but I'll show you how quickly it is, how quickly you can do it. If you can get it on there. Last background, and I'm going to select background 2 on it. And I normally on the background 2, I make a jigsaw large, and you'll see in a minute why I do that. And I also set this as time. I usually have about 10 seconds. And when I get that, if I want to now, I don't have the sound capability here other than just the PC sound. And you heard what the sound, so I'm not going to go and select it, but I will show you, or you were able to see through the video, the sound. But if you select this and go up and select file name under the MIDI file, it should show this to you. You look. You can go in and, like I said, here's all the different selections. They have quite a few classical, fanfare. They have a whole bunch of shorts, which for our sound card doesn't work. They have jazz, 2 or 3 of jazz. They have several international, like if you wanted the Chinese sound, Oriental sound, they have one of those. So they have quite a few selections. And like I said, you can do this look and listen. You can look and listen at each one of them, and it allows you to be able to hear what they sound like, so you can kind of preview them before you select them.
Why don't you do fanfare one so they can hear the difference between the sound card and the PC speaker?
Okay. You want me to just incorporate it in? Or
Just look. It's coming
on.
just from the laptop. You can barely hear it at all because it's not a sound card or anything. You could, though, incorporate that if you didn't have a sound card and you still wanted to have some sort of sound. You could pull that in and be able to have that. But a sound card makes it much nicer.
Okay, I've gone in and I've changed all my transitions, and so then at that point I say okay, and then I can go up and I can actually come do my slide and play my slide. Play my slideshow, which is not as neat out in music. And what I do is I'm playing this on the computer through the mixer and the camcorder. I have a microphone that I'm speaking to, and I talk as the screens come up, and I just go through and manually select each one of the slides. I have a storyboard that shows the word parts because obviously I don't know what the word part is since it's not there. So I have a storyboard that I read from, and if it's something that comes directly on the screen, then I of course go ahead and read it on the screen. Maybe add a little bit, but for the most part I read what's on the screen. And then this one shows the little red check mark, and then the word muscle comes in gray. The red check mark indicates the word part, and then the second level represents what it means. And I would just be commenting or reading these off and having them spelled. So that's just how easy that it actually is. Now I want to show you one other thing.
And that's what you keyed in, just now.
That's what I just keyed in, yes. Honest. Okay, now, one of the things that's really neat about this is the fact, like I said, it's very easy to change the master gallery. These are all preset for you. And if you find one that doesn't work for you, either for color or arrangement of the text, it's real easy to go in and change to another one and see whether that one's going to work for you. And the best place to show this is to get into this one that shows you 8 slides at one time. And in this case, I only have 7. But if you had more than the 8 slides, of course, it would only show 8 at a time. I can go back into the slide and go into the master gallery and go down and pick a different one. And I had one that I was going to show you called City. I make sure that the word City is highlighted, and then I retrieve it. Now, Word Perfect will immediately come in and replace Lake with City. It'll keep my text there. And again, I'm not doing anything except just selecting things off the menu. Again, through this, it allows you to see what it's going to look like. Can't read it yet, but you can still see at least what it would look like in big bold or in the full screen. Okay, now that's one, but let's say I still don't like that, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to pick another one. And these are all the different, any one of these are available to you. The one I'm going to pick this time is this grid, because it has white lettering on blue, and maybe I think that one's going to work out better for me, so I highlight grid and retrieve it. And again, Word Perfect is going to bring it in, keep my text. And I can just keep doing that until I run out of all the possibilities. And then if I just don't find anything that I like, then I could do some things to it that, I could go in and make some changes, like maybe I like the color, but the font's just too big. I can't get it to work with title or text. Now you notice one thing, what happened here on my title. This one doesn't like my medical terminology, it's too long, so it chopped off part of it. Well, what I do on that is what I was telling you earlier. I go into the medical terminology and see the title has been selected here, but instead these are all the different things that you can select as far as how the screen is going to appear. I'm going to select this text and see what that does for me. Voila. Still big, still looks like a title page, but it likes my medical terminology without me having to go in and change my font. And many times I found on a lot of these gallery selections, if the title slide won't let you show your full title, the text will, and it gives you the same basic look. And that saves you having to do a whole lot of font changing. So let's play this one and see how it looks. You can also do a runtime version. I haven't done any of those yet because what I'm using is strictly for on the video text, but you could do a runtime version. You can also do a quick, which I may let you do because I'm running over. Seeing that pretty? Very readable.
And then as this was playing, you would actually have a microphone and be recording on top. And so you build it first and then record it.
The orange papers, the first one shows you the equipment I am currently using and the software I'm currently using. And then the second one shows the minimum requirements on Word Perfect Presentation. Word Perfect Presentation is a package that Educational wise, probably around about 230 to 280. And I realize, that in some circumstances, like I said, this one, I'm not building formulas and that kind of thing, although I should be able to, because WordPerfect itself has a formula editor in it, and if I needed to do something like that. But for me, this works great. And I can sit down and within about, 2 minimum, 4 maximum hours have probably a very usable format for my students to be able to use. They can take it, most of them have a VCR TV at home. If they don't, they can take their copy and go to the library and play it back in one of the rooms. We are currently, some of my students like it so much that they are currently bringing a VHS tape to me, and I'm having it dubbed for them, so they can have their own copy.
I was going to ask you if you make it available through
Yes.
the bookstore or something for them to
Well,
purchase.
I was going to, and I'm still planning on it, but with this new edition of my textbook, I've got to find out how much change she's made to it. I may have to redo all 22 tapes I've already done. If she's made enough change. I'm hoping she hasn't made a whole lot of changes as far as terminology, because the terminology and the word parts that I picked out, they're not going to change as long as she left them in her textbook. Now, if she took them out of her textbook, I'm in trouble. But I can't visualize her doing that, because I tried to pick out those terms that I knew were going to be around for a long time that my students would come in contact with. So I'm hoping when I get on September 1st, he keeps telling me I'm not going to get my book till September 1st, and we're going to use it in terms 1 this fall. But when I get my new textbook, then if this is okay, then I'm going to start possibly making them available in the bookstore. But I've got to check into a lot of possibilities on that. Because for one thing, I don't think that we can dub that many tapes, because if it's a 2-hour tape, it's going to take 2 hours to dub it. We don't have fast dubbing capabilities, and so we're not going to be able to mass produce them, so I'm going to have to check into all the particulars on that. But that wasn't essentially my goal. Now the blue sheet tells about my students' comments, and I did not twist their arm. This is their real feeling about these tapes. I currently have probably about 7 or 8 of my population right now that are bringing in tapes and getting copies made for them. Any questions?
How expensive is the WordPerfect?
Educationally, I think you can get between $230 and $280. And the thing about it, I hope that you see here too, if you're wanting to do presentations rather than using transparencies, you can use this that same way. If you have the capability of the TV and computer setup like this, you can do the same thing.
How much does the Aberkey box to convert the signal to the TV cost?
I believe it was about $250, wasn't it? Something like that. Now, I will say this. The computer equipment that I'm showing there is my personal equipment. I've been looking for something like this for a very long time, and this has, all we did was buy it and take it home and plug it in. It has the CD-ROM player, it has the sound card, it also has the PBTV video capture, and it's just a real super. Some people may not like Packard Bell, but I liked it. I've been looking at it. When it first came out, it was like $3,500, and they came down really low on this particular one in December. And so I snatched it, or we snatched it, I should say. It isn't just mine. But the camera is our camcorder. All of the equipment is at home. But that's not to say that you don't have the same equipment available to you in the TRC. I do this on my own time after hours, because when I'm out here at school, I'm busy doing other things, and I don't really have the time to go down there. And so this was one thing I was really excited about, was being able to do this. But you can do the same thing there as well.
But as an instructor, and the development time that it took you to develop this, do you feel it's displaced classroom time now and has been effective for you as an instructor? If you had to do it all over again, would you do it?
Oh, absolutely.
Because
Yes.
it
Like I
saved you
said,
time?
it saved me time, and like I said this morning, my 2 terms classes went on without me there, but yet I was there because I played the tape. Somebody went in, stuck it in the VCR, pushed play, and the students away they went.
another place that was really helpful that goes along with that question, last semester when Patsy was out for surgery, I had the honor of covering terms 1 and 2. And when I went in, I was kind of scared of pronouncing these words, trying to spell the words for the students, keeping everything going, because they had 6 more weeks of instruction left to go through. Not only did I use the videotapes sometimes in the classroom itself, but I watched the videotape to learn how to pronounce the words, so I could say things like esophagogastroduodenoscopy and then spell it for these people and everything, because that's not my background. So it does help several degrees.
Now, keep in mind, and I'm not bragging about this, please understand, when I said that I'm doing this at home on my own time, nobody made me. I did this because I wanted to. Like I said, this is something I've done for a long, long time, and I realize there's a lot of people that, and I've misput my family a lot for this. In fact, my daughter the other night said, "Oh no, she's going to the bedroom to record. Stop her!" So it's gotten to be almost a joke in a way at home, but at the same time they understand, and I promised my daughter I'm going to even use the same method to help her this fall in some of her studies, because she likes to work with the computer, and she likes to play videotapes too, so I'm going to do some of this stuff for her. And that was one of the major reasons why I wanted something like this at home. Okay, I wanted to make that clear, because it almost made it sound like I had to go buy this, and it wasn't that I had to. We've been wanting something like this for our kids. My son's already put the CD-ROM, because it came with several CD dictionaries, encyclopedias, and maybe speaking, typing thing, and so there's several things that came with it the kids have been able to use as well. So this was something that we wanted, and then the fact that it helped me with my job was just an added bonus to it. So I wanted to make that clear, because after I got to think about the way I said it didn't come out quite the way I wanted it to.
But it also says a lot of students that will get more and more, but have a lot more exposure to this type of stuff.
Right, and that's another reason why just the straight lecture doesn't hold people's attention anymore, because they've gone and seen True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger and all this fancy blow up and all the special effects, and so you standing up there in front of class just doesn't hold their attention anymore.
And yet one of the
What I'm going to show you is a section of a departmental orientation that we did within our department last fall. And this section deals only with a group of graphical images that we pulled off of videotape. And the package that I'm going to be using to work with this is Podium. And the reason I picked Podium is just because of the interfaces that it allows that aren't necessarily allowed for in WordPerfect Presentation or some of the other packages in as easily and readily a fashion as what they are with Podium. But as we go through, I'll explain a little bit of what's going on. The portion you're going to see is actually clips of all of the faculty that are in our department. And the way we did this, we had Jerry come in one day and videotape small shots of the faculty within the department. And we didn't want to just show the videotape. So what we did, we captured images from the videotape and created them in PCX files that allowed us to pull it into the computer system. And we went ahead and did this for a couple of reasons. One was the orientation. But also later on, I've been using these at different times. Patsy has used them in some other video clips that she's done where she was introducing herself. Some other faculty have seen it and they've said, well, I could use this for such and such. But it was a way that we could have all of the faculty introduced, at least visually, to the students within the department, the first-time students, first semester, without having all the faculty have to be in the room when we were doing this and not playing it on VHS tape and using the computer system. Now when we did this, we actually played it from videotape because we ended up doing it over in Covell Hall, but we did the same process of bringing the graphic images in to the videotape is what I did just right now. Instead of going out to a TV alone, we went to the camcorder and created a videotape of this same thing. That's a very quick and easy illustration of a Podium package, and it doesn't really even show all of Podium's strengths and abilities, but it's something that we did with Podium. And Podium has its own little niche that is different from presentation. What I showed was just a simple presentation. It could have been done with WordPerfect presentation. But in the background, I don't have the other equipment that was attached to it originally. I did originally have a CD-ROM to furnish background music. It was not computer-generated music. It was music from a CD that, in fact, I think it was the theme from Raiders of the Lost Ark that was playing and timed to where each of the different images would come up at a different point, kind of a dramatic point in the music itself. That's something that you can do with Podium. You can do it with other packages as well, but Podium lets you time things a lot easier, I found.
Fun too.
Yes. Podium also, other than CD, you can use Laserdisc, you can use any of the AVIs, in fact, with Podium. You can pull in graphic images, not just PCX, you can pull in TIFF files, Targa.
Well, with the new Podium, you can do even more than with the Podium versions we can use.
Right. And Podium is very friendly, actually, to work with. Let me quit out of here and show you the program that it took in order to make this work.
Is Podium similar to Podium?
Podium is, the man who wrote Podium is at the University of Delaware. And one of the interesting things about it is the way they price it. The more copies of Podium you buy, the cheaper the price becomes. And so typically through Stillwater and so forth, we can generally get a copy of Podium for around $200 or even less. But that's the kind of thing that institutionally, if we used it a great deal on campus, we would get the price even lower than that. And its new version, which runs out of Windows, if you are on a machine with a modem, you have direct internet access through Podium itself. So there's some, I mean, this guy's way ahead in instructional technology, and just every time you come up with a new idea, he's already added it to the program.
But it is different than Authority.
Yes, it is.
Purpose.
It's not really an operating system where Authority is. It's still a presentation package, but it's built for a little bit different market than the other packages are.
This is a very simple demonstration. When we brought this up, the first line that was on that blue screen before I started had OSU Okmulgee Departmental Orientation. Well, those are the first two lines, and that's your menu title. Then after that are all the lines, and you probably can't read that from where you are, but each of these lines of text tells which PCX image that I wanted to use, what method I wanted it to have the transition, move from one screen to the next, the direction that I wanted the transition to occur, just like what Patsy did in presentation, only now we have to tell it in the program how to do it. That's where you've moved up a level to your skill and your ability by going from WordPerfect presentation up to Podium. You're going to have to know what the choices are. You're going to have to know how to use those choices in a program structured environment. You're going to have to tell it if you want it to have a timed wait. You have to tell it how long to wait for. If you want it to wait for the keyboard to have some kind of interaction, you're going to have to tell it that's what it's going to need. But Podium is just one step above, but that step above also gives you the interaction with CD, with Laserdisc, with videotape, all the other tools that you could work with in a full-fledged multimedia system. It provides for interaction between the presenter and the equipment. It would not necessarily provide interaction between the presenter and the class that might be presented to. But if the system were put out with all the pieces and all the components into the library, then a student could go with a runtime version of the program or the module that you created and work with it. What just happened is something that's kind of common to using a laptop that has a battery saver feature. This will happen every 2 minutes if I don't press a key or do something with the keyboard. And it's called a sleep mode. And it wants to go asleep and not use the battery while I'm not doing something with the keyboard. You can play with it, you can refine it, and you can turn it on, turn it off different ways. But I didn't do that today. This program, it can be very large. One of the features about it, all these PCX files are separate images. They can be pulled out, they can be reused, they can be modified different ways with different programs that allow you to go in and modify a PCX file. Any of your paint programs, you can do other things with them. So if you were going to do something like Dolph's schematics earlier, you had created them for authority, and now you want to do a presentation to a large group and it's going to be strictly presentation, those same PCX files can be brought in here. The clip art that Patsy was talking about, the Metaclip on CD-ROM, can be brought in here. We've done the video capture, so if you have a videotape that you have 1 or 2 really good shots that you would like to have and then you'd like to overlay text on them, you can do that either in presentation or you can go to Podium if you want to do different things with the videotape or with CD or with laser later on. One of the things I'm going to be talking about later, we're going to go through a little exercise of matching applications in the classroom or in a presentation to sites so that you can get a little bit better feeling of which ones do what kinds of things. But this is Podium. Podium's been on campus for a while, and several of you, I think, went to Stillwater to see it demonstrated in almost its entirety, everything that it could do. It can build a very impressive presentation, but the skill level there is one up from just a beginner. You have to look at it, you have to go into the book. I brought the book. The book is not that helpful in some cases because the explanations aren't that great as to what you do, why you do, and how you do, but it gets you started and then you play with it. That's one of the things that I've had to do is just play with it and use it to be able to figure out the different things that could be done, how they're done easily or how they're done more complicated. And I always try for things to be a little bit easier. Earlier, Patsy talked about a runtime version being able to be created with WordPerfect Presentation. And that's what I'm going to show you now. If I did not have WordPerfect Presentation on this computer, and you all know that we do have because she did her demonstration, but if you didn't have it, you could create the runtime version, and as long as you're going to a computer with a similar configuration, and it has to be, there are certain key things that have to be identical within the configuration, but if it's a similar configuration, you can actually go in and create the runtime. And this one is called Show. And it is going into WordPerfect Presentation. And it's, this is what I'm going to use to talk about multimedia uses in the classroom. There are different applications. And this is something that might make your ability to identify what you want to do and how you want to do it a little easier later on. There are the simple presentations. And there are complex, interactive, and the ability to have some form of assessment all going on within the computer at the time that you're using it. Whether you're giving a presentation to a group such as this, to a class, if a student is using the product by himself or herself, there are different things that you can do and that you build in. Simple presentations like this are using technology to replace familiar things, whether it be an overhead with transparency sheets, whether it be a chalkboard. This is just another way of presenting information. The presentation that we're doing, we're using a laptop computer, the AverKey, and a television. If you wanted to, you could go to videotape, and then if you were going somewhere else, all you'd have to do is request a VCR and a TV. You can tailor it to what you're going to be working on and working with, but what you have to do is know what the end product really has to be. You can use technology to increase the interest. appeal to the visual learner. If I were just up here telling you all these facts and figures and all the different ways you could use multimedia, you probably wouldn't pay attention that closely. But if you get to hear me, watch the screen, if I had gone ahead and pulled in sound, but I didn't because this doesn't have sound card, different things could be used to increase the interest that you have. Complex presentations would be stepping up that level away from WordPerfect presentation into something more like Podium that lets you have interaction with different pieces of equipment. And it's using technology to provide safe and cost-efficient instruction. Dolph talked about earlier he would like to have a safe way of showing a resistor blown up if it wasn't connected properly. Well, it would be kind of expensive to blow up a lot of resistors over and over and over, and it could hurt somebody as they were doing it as well. So if you used multimedia to show that, and if you use something such as a simulation of that environment where they actually picked choices of this is the one I want to put in and this is the way I want to put it in, then you could show what's going to happen. And it may not be it might be animated, it might be in a cartoon structure that shows what's going to happen, but that cartoon blowing up is a lot better than the resistor blowing up in the face of a student or something. So simulations of dangerous or costly instruction, they are using simulations in the teaching of flight, in teaching surgery in medical schools. You may not want to know this, but a lot of your surgeons, if they're just now graduating from medical school, the amount of time that they spend at the surgery table on live patients has been reduced by about 50%. More of it's done at the computer. You can have assessment of ability. This is where you pull in even yet another package or set of packages, something like Authority or Compel, where you have the ability to have the presentation, the interaction, and the students entering in information, making a choice, and then recording that information for the tracking of students, providing feedback to the students, suggestions of other activities or other alternatives that they might want to pursue in gaining the information that they were supposed to get. This is taking what we originally saw in CAID a step further and doing more with it and maybe making it an individual presentation to students, maybe not on the mainframe but at the PC or in some other delivery mode. So once again, to match them, a simple presentation, a tool such as WordPerfect Presentation that can be very familiar and very comfortable because, as Patsy said earlier, all of the text and all of the features and all of the functions of WordPerfect are still there in WordPerfect Presentation. They recommend in WordPerfect Presentation that you use the mouse, but you don't have to. You can use the same keyboard keystrokes out of WordPerfect in Presentation to do all your modification of text. If you want to bold, F8, F6 is still bold. F8 is still underlined. Control F8 still lets you change fonts and different things. So it's all there and it's all friendly. Complex presentations where you want interaction with different pieces of equipment. On campus right now, the easier one of the ones that we have on a DOS platform. Now I didn't even approach the Mac platform, but on the DOS platform would be Podium. It does require that you step up into a little bit of a programming environment and that you learn a little bit more about how to interact with these pieces of equipment, but that's the one that you would probably go to. If you wanted interactive presentations where the students actually do something at the computer at the same time they're receiving the presentation, like what Dolph did, then Compel and Authority would probably be the choices that you would go to right now. There are other packages that we have on campus, but probably these two would be the easiest to go to at this point. And if you want assessment of ability, I don't know for sure what all the capabilities of Compel are. It does have some tracking abilities in it, but Authority, like Dolph said earlier, you can go out to programs such as DBase. You can hold that information You can, as an instructor later on, you can access that database. You can find out scores on study guides built with authority. You can find out how many times the student used the study guides or the testing. You can actually present tests on modules developed with authority. There are all sorts of measurement tools with it. So that would probably be the one that you'd pick right now. There are other choices of presentation media or delivery systems. A simple CD-ROM, such as what Dolph had earlier, that is already pre-manufactured. Laser discs would get you started into a multimedia environment as well. And there's nothing wrong with using the pre-manufactured media, as long as it matches and meets the needs that you have in the classroom. There are several catalogs over at TLC. There are several sources, vendors, everything, and I don't think you really can go to an area that there isn't at least part of it addressed with pre-manufactured technology. The CDI, or Compact Disc Interactive, is another one, and I'm going to show you Compact Disc Interactive here in just a second, and how I used it in the classroom when I taught the Humanities 2 class last fall. It was a neat package or a neat delivery system to have available. Virtual reality systems. There are educational virtual reality systems. They cost a lot in the technology that you have to go along with them to deliver them. We have the ability with most of the, well, with a lot of the equipment that we have, the virtual reality systems could come in, and it depends really on your definition of virtual reality also. We don't have on campus right now any of the gloves or any of the helmets that I'm aware of, at least. Haven't even dealt with yet, that are being used in education. Video simulation systems. This is a system where you have interactive video, and there are also systems such as interactive TV that are used, and they do basically the same thing that I'm talking about with computer presentations, only they take it on a different atmosphere and a different media. The hardware, a lot of times you're going to see different people define the hardware requirements differently. This is the minimum hardware requirement for a multimedia system that uses most of the features that we've shown today. Authority will let you go a little lower, and that's a nice feature of it. Presentation will let you go a little bit lower, but not much. You can't put it on a 386. And if you want to see something agonizingly slow, when you go to ring 3, you will see that, because it's a lot slower than what you see here. The 25 megahertz is about the slowest speed for the response time that we want to have in a presentation, but you can do it a little slower. But this is optimal minimum type of machine. Sounds strange, doesn't it? I took that from a book. 4 megabyte of RAM, 8 is recommended, especially if you're going to work within Windows. If you're going to work within the new Windows, Windows 3.1, it will be a little bit slower if you don't have the 8 megabyte. 160 megabyte or larger hard drive, again, depending on the usage of what you want to do and how you want to do it. The 160 can be utilized, but you're not going to put a lot of packages on that 160. We used to think when hard drives first came out, 10 was wonderful, you'll never fill 10. Then 20 was needed, we'll never fill 20, and now it's 200, 500, and so forth. If you're really going to get serious, and if you're going to bring graphics in, and this is one of the reasons Patsy didn't bring graphics into hers, you're going to have a lot of storage. There are compression features, but WordPerfect Presentation talks about in one of their manuals, if you're going to utilize graphics, instead of megabytes, you're going to have to start talking gigabytes, because you need mass storage. There are preferred options to go along with multimedia. One is the CD-ROM, such as what Dolph used earlier, double speed and photo CD capable. If you're looking at purchasing right now, I would purchase all of the capabilities at one time, and you can do that with the packages, and they're coming down in price. They're not as high as they were originally. A 16-bit digital audio card with music synthesizers and speakers. That would be the equivalent of what is in this system, isn't it? Is it Sound Blaster?
No, it's not.
8-bit cards are available. You get a better performance and more ability with the 16-bit card. And the music synthesizers that you have also are a variation.
And you also, with the 16,
Some form of digitizing equipment is also a preferred option, but everyone doesn't have to have one. As long as you have access to a color scanner, that's going to let you pull those images in, have the ability to put them either to PCX or whatever image format that you need. Patsy talked about the video capture that she had done. I've talked about it. We had to use a card off of the machine, the PBTV card, to capture, and that is in essence the same as a scanning. It's a digital scanning, but it's of a still frame. It's converting the frames from VCR tape, videotape, into still images and scanning those in one step.
and then we have,
Systems. Now, one that's a little bit newer to our campus, we've had it since last fall, is the CDI. And it looks kind of dark right now because it itself also goes into a sleep mode of sorts. And CDI is a purchased package as well of Compact Disc Interactive. This is on the Renaissance Arts, and specifically around the area of Florence. And when I was teaching this class, the students did okay. They understood what I was talking about whenever we were talking about the different influences that led through the period of the Renaissance and all of the different factors. But their textbook didn't go into a great amount of detail on all of the areas, and this was a way that I could pull those things in. I'll play a short portion.
And the three principal Medici chancellors who ruled the city for most of the 15th century. While most of Italy was ruled by tyrants, the Medici provided Florence with a free republic.
Now, one thing
Respect
that
for law,
tied this in very well with the textbook that was being used,
active support
most
the
of the
arts.
illustrations of the
The
CDI
first and
are also
foremost
illustrations
chancellor
that are
of the
in
Renaissance
the textbook.
was Cosimo de'
And there is a
Medici,
feature that
who
we
led
can
the
go
city
into
from
later on
1434
and
to
pull in
1464,
interpretations of what the different
the source of
paintings,
Medici
sketchings
wealth
meant,
was banked.
and some of the
Artists
factors
in
about
Europe,
the artists at
with
the
offices
time
in London,
and their lifestyles and so
Avignon.
forth. So it brought a little bit more
The Medici
interest and a
Bank,
little bit
which
more
made
of an
international
appeal
trade possible.
to
And
the
so,
Renaissance
rather
period
than erecting
itself.
monuments to his own glory,
The CDI uses a device, a remote control that's similar to a video game device because it has this little pointer thing that I usually don't get right. But there are different areas within each CDI, and you have to play them each and get familiar with them because they are structured a little different. In this one, I could go into factors of the history, of the arts, the epilogue, an overview, and credits. And each of these different areas goes into a certain
what was
realm
the
of
origin of the
instruction.
Renaissance, and why did it happen first in the hills of Tuscany? For one, the city
Right now, the CDI is not being utilized in classrooms, but it is out in the library where students can go and they can check out this discs. They go up and they ask for it. And if they wanted this one, this would be the Renaissance of Florence. And they could find out additional information, goes into maps, goes into a lot of features that you can't necessarily always go into in the classroom because of the time structure that you're working with. But you can also, as an instructor, if you find that there are key points that aren't easily understood by your students, go in and you can plan out. You have to do basically the same thing that you do with any of these presentation systems. You almost have to storyboard it, figure out which ones you need to go to, where they are, and then you can utilize it. There are, I don't know how many volumes of CDI
I think there
discs.
were 12. When we bought the CDI,
The mastering hardware and software on our campus, soon, we'll have the ability to create these ourselves. And the things like Patsy has done could be converted to CDI. The presentations like Dolph is doing could be converted to CDI or CD-ROM, or what are the other two?
CDX.
CDX.
And